Hello guys, and this is Scott here, and welcome to another historic video. And in this one we're doing by far the most requested video that I have on my list right now, and that is of the extremely mild November and December of 2015. And this one actually I was going to put off for a while because it is quite a recent event, so I didn't really think it needed a historic video at this point. But because so many people wanted me to do it, I've decided that we're going to do it in this video. Now, of course, as I said at the beginning, November and December 15 were extremely mild months and also very wet months as well, that basically redefined the baseline for mild weather in the UK. And we're going to have a look at that as we go through the video. So just before I get started, I'd just like to say that many of the facts and figures that you hear in this video come from Trevor Harley's personal weather website. His website's a fantastic resource. He has detailed facts and figures going back to the start of the 1900s and smaller fragments of information going back further than that. So it's a fantastic resource for weather information, and the charts that you see in this video come from the historical archive at wettercentral.de. Again, they have a fantastic archive of charts going back to January of 1871. So like I always say, if you want to request a historic video, you can pick anything from the start of 1871. So we're going to start off on the 1st of October just to put this video into context. And October 2015 was actually quite an anticyclonic month. It followed on from quite a cool September actually. We had the coolest September since 1994 last year. And October really just followed on from this. So we start off on the 1st of October and we have high pressure generally around the country. So the 1st and the 2nd we have high pressure on top of the country. And this is actually a lovely pairing of days actually. There was almost unbroken sunshine after mist and fog cleared in the morning, and temperatures were up into the high teens, low 20s. So very pleasant weather for the start of October. And really that went through as we went through the month. So on the 5th we bring a bit of an area of low pressure in from the west, before by the 6th and into the 9th of October high pressure builds back through the country and into the 12th of October as well. And you can see we've actually got a bit of a Scandinavian high there as we go through the 12th and into the 15th. And you know, that really would have been quite a good winter pattern if it had occurred a few weeks later. But unfortunately in October all it really brought was cloud and, you know, slightly cooler than average temperatures. So really a bit of a waste of a Scandinavian high, but generally it did keep us dry, so that was a good thing throughout October. Through the 18th and into the 20th now, the high pressure actually builds through the country again and actually starts to collapse down to the southwest. And this is really now where that exceptionally mild period of weather began to kick off. Because really it's from the end of October to the end of December, start of January, we were just exceptionally mild, and this is where it kicks off. So through the 21st, you can see we're actually bringing low pressure to the north of Scotland. And through the 21st and the 22nd actually, we bring actually a very deep area of low pressure through. And as that clears through the 23rd, we get high pressure building to the south. But notice how it's going into Europe and it's actually starting to put the winds into the southwest. So, you know, this is just allowing the weather to turn slightly warmer. And through the 24th, again, we have that southwesterly wind into the 25th and the 26th before we actually turn the winds into a southerly. So we start to bring up some very mild weather. And actually the end of October was actually quite nice. There was a couple of wet days, but other than this, but with sunshine actually temperatures were up to 18, 19 degrees. So it was really a very pleasant spell of weather. And really that goes on through the 27th and into the 28th. They bring a bit of a weather front in on the 28th, but it generally remains very mild. And into the 29th and the 30th of October again, the winds are thrown back into the south. And that takes us into Halloween. Again, we have a big area of high pressure setting up now over Eastern Europe. And again, this is allowing warm southerly winds to waft up. So we had a very mild Halloween in 2015. It's interestingly not quite as mild as the Halloween in 2014. That was the warmest on record, but nonetheless we still have a very mild Halloween this year. And that takes us into the start of November 2015. And November 2015 was an exceptionally mild month with a central England temperature of 9.5 degrees, which makes it the third mildest November on the CET series. And it's actually the warmest November since only 2011. Actually, we had a very warm November in 2011. But nonetheless, again, it's still the third mildest, and it was also a very wet month as well across southern Scotland and parts of northern England. So we start off on the 1st of November 2015, and again we're bringing up that mild southerly wind, and at this point we're bringing the mildest of the weather in. And so actually on the 1st of November we saw a record high for November. We have temperatures going up to 22.4 degrees at Troscoid. So combined with sunshine and a bit of a firm wind, temperatures going up into the low 20s. And that's really, very remarkable for early November, especially when you consider really that the sun at this time of the year is about what it is in the middle of February. That's really very remarkable. And it was very mild everywhere as well. I had temperatures going up to 19 degrees where I am in Manchester after bits of morning fog cleared. And again, temperatures were up into the low 20s across other parts of Wales. So just ridiculously mild for the start of November. Not everyone did get it though. There was a few stubborn fog patches around that lingered and really kept temperatures sort of in the low to mid double figures. But if the sun came out where you were on this day, it was very warm actually, almost warm feeling. And those are the upper air temperatures there on the 1st of November. See, the cool air is well to the north of the country, and we've got very mild air, even up to about 12 Celsius at 850 HPA over the UK there. So exceptionally mild temperatures throughout this first part of November. And it goes on into the 2nd as well. This was another very mild day, very similar to the first though, slightly cooler, but still, very bizarre feeling warmth for the time of year. And into the 3rd as well. And by the 4th though, that does start to break down a bit as we bring low pressure in from the west. So we turn the winds into the southwest now, so it stays very mild, but we go more to mild and changeable type weather that you'd sort of more expect in November, though it was warmer than you'd expect nonetheless. So there we are on the 5th as well, on bonfire night, and again we keep that mild southwesterly coming up. And this again was another really bizarre night. I was having a bit of a bonfire party with a few friends on this night, and we were just sat outside in t-shirts, and even though it was breezy, it was, as I said, just warm enough to sit outside in t-shirts. Ridiculously mild even during the long November nights you have. Just absolutely ridiculous. And we keep that as well into the 6th, just very mild nights. And into the 7th and the 8th as well. We just keep getting surges of the Azores high, though in the north it does stay wet near those areas of low pressure. Into the 9th, and on the 10th again we get another ridiculously mild day for the time of year. Temperatures again on this day were up to 17, 18, 19 degrees. I had 17 degrees on this day. And actually overnight on the 10th and into the 11th of November, temperatures really didn't get below the mid-teens for many areas. So just absolutely unprecedentedly mild. And the 10th was actually quite sunny as well. But that doesn't last, because as we go into the 11th, the cloud and the dreariness comes back. As I say, it was actually it was a very dull November as well, as often mild months are at this time of the year. But that just in a way helped to keep it mild, because it stopped the nights cooling off. And and into the 12th, and you can see actually this is where the month starts to turn quite stormy now, because as we go into the 12th and into the early hours of the 13th, you see we've got this vicious area of low pressure moving by to the north of Scotland. And this was the year actually that the Met Office first started naming storms. You know, they trialled it in 2015. So this was the first ever officially named storm in the UK. This was Storm Abigail. And it brought some very severe winds to the north, as well as quite a bit of lightning across Scotland. So, you know, some pretty late season thunderstorms for the north. And there was showers as well further south, some pretty hefty showers. So this is where the month begins to turn quite unsettled. But that quickly clears away into the 14th, and again we just get another big southwesterly shot through the 14th and the 15th of November before another area of low pressure moves to the north of Scotland on the 16th. Well, then as we go into the 17th, again you can see we've got another area of low pressure developing in the Atlantic, and this was the second named storm. This was Storm Barney, and this roared through overnight 17th and into the 18th of November. You can see some very tight isobars on that actually. But this is where we see a little bit of a very brief change now, because as we go through the 19th and into the 20th of November, you see we've just got a very brief ridge of high pressure building out into the Atlantic, and this gives us a bit of a colder weekend, and this was actually what let the month down in a way. It was really looking like up until this point we were going to see the mildest November on record. I was following the CET, and up until like the 19th, 20th, it was something like 11.2, 11.3 degrees, something ridiculous like that. But it was just this cold weekend really that let it down, that just, you know, dropped it enough so that we did miss out on the record. But even with this, you know, still an exceptionally mild month. It just highlights really that how mild this first 3 weeks of November were. So as we go into the 21st, you can see we've actually got a bit of a northerly wind there. And there's an area of low pressure coming down. And rather ironically, this very mild November produces a very early snowfall. For some places, this was the earliest snowfall since November 2010. And for some other places, actually, it was the earliest snowfall since 2008. So very remarkably, this ridiculously mild November brings snow. You know, it just shows how, you know, bizarre the British weather can be. But as I said, it was only a very brief spell, because as we go through the 22nd and into the 23rd, that area of high pressure, the Azores High, collapses back through the country, and we bring another warm front through the country on the 23rd. And again, as we finish off November, so the 24th into the 25th, we generally keep milder winds across the country. So through the 26th and the 27th, again we just bring the southwesterlies back into the 28th before another very vicious system comes by on the 29th, and this was Storm Clodagh. That's an Irish name, so I'm sorry if my pronunciation of that was terrible, but nonetheless this was the third named storm. And again, this brought some particularly severe weather, and there was some big squall lines around on this day, and again some more heavy rain, so you know the rainfall totals are quickly stacking up. But that's where we finish off November, you know, really just again very mild and pretty unsettled. But that takes us into the infamous December 2015, and December 2015 has an unbelievable CET of 9.7, which makes it even warmer than the November we've just had, you know, and that was the third warmest. And this is, of course, by far the warmest December on record, and it's warmer than all Marches, and there's only one November that's ever been warmer than this, 1994. So it really is just extraordinarily mild. And just to highlight how mild it was in the south in particular, Plymouth actually didn't get anything below 10 Celsius in this month, so that really is unprecedented. to not get below 10 degrees would be a pretty big achievement for a summer month, but to do it in December is pretty remarkable. And as I say, with that CET, winter lovers, if you're a fan of cold and snow in winter, you'd think we're actually doing pretty bad if we get a CET in the 6 degree range. To get it up to 9.7 is really pretty unprecedented, and you can only run out of words to describe how ridiculous this month was. And of course, if you are a fan of cold and snow, it was a complete write-off of a month, obviously, and probably your worst nightmare of a December. For me, I actually very much enjoyed this month, because this is actually my preference during winter. So I very much enjoyed December 15, but we won't go through it before I end up annoying quite a lot of you. So we start off on the 1st of December, and again it's just where November left off. We have very mild southwesterly winds blasting up through the country. So, temperatures again into double figures. Through the 2nd and the 3rd of December, there's just absolutely no change. And as we go through the 4th, we have an area of low pressure coming by to the north, but that was nothing, because as we went through into the 5th of December, this was probably one of the most severe storms we've ever had in this country. And not so much for wind, but definitely for rainfall. This was Storm Desmond. You can see that very tight 950 millibar low to the north of Scotland there. And this brought some absolutely catastrophic rainfall on the 5th. Just to give you some rainfall totals, throughout the rainfall day, which is recorded between 9 AM on Saturday the 5th to 9 AM on Sunday the 6th of December, we actually record 264.4 millimetres of rain at Thirlmere, and if that wasn't enough, we record 341.4 millimetres of rain at Honister Pass, which makes it the wettest 24-hour period the UK's ever seen, and that fell in the Cumbrian Highlands. And as you can of course presume, all that rainfall just went into the rivers and just caused some absolutely catastrophic flooding through the 5th of December. Just some absolutely diabolical flash floods. And I have a few pictures for you actually. This is a picture in Carlisle, and I think this was on the 6th actually. You can just see the river waters just right up to the top of the traffic lights. Rather counterintuitively under a clear sky, but rainfall doesn't clear. Floodwaters don't clear away that quickly. And this is another one. This is in Kendal. That's the river. I've seen the river in Kendal, and it's, to think that's just absolutely unbelievable. Just, you run out of words to describe, how horrendous this day must have been for people up there. Definitely a very interesting day, but also came at a pretty horrendous cost through the 5th of December. And the cause of this was because if I go to the chart there on the 6th of December, you can see that we've got a very long drawn southwesterly wind there, and this was very moist, and as that moist air mass just slammed into the Cumbrian mountains, it underwent the orographic lift and just produced copiously amounts of ridiculous rainfall totals, just absolutely ridiculous. But as we go into the 6th, that clears away, and that was the first of 3 very wet days in this month. There was 3 ridiculously wet days in December 15. And it's the wettest December on record because of this, unsurprisingly. But as we go through the 6th, we do clear away with a lot of that rain. And again, it just stays very mild through the 7th and into the 8th of December. Again, we have low pressure in the Atlantic and high pressure. That's a classic Bartlett high, that what many winter lovers would call the dreaded Bartlett high, bringing exceptionally mild temperatures for the time of year. Through the 9th and the 10th of December, there was just no change. We just keep it very mild into the 11th. As we go through on the 12th of December, this is when we get the second very wet day. And as you can see, through the north of Scotland, we've got a little bit of a northwesterly there. So throughout the northern half of the country, we were trying to bring down a bit of cooler air. And actually December 15 was a bit cooler across Scotland. But that slammed into the very mild air that we have in place across the south. And around about where that black line is there, which is the jet stream, there was a weather front strung out, and just fueled by that temperature contrast on the 12th, it just produced again another copious amount, and just produced yet more copious rainfall on the 12th. So again, the river levels are building up more and more. And as we go into the 13th, that clears away. It rained for pretty much the whole day on the 12th. Again, I have a few time lapses from this period, and you can go back on the channel and watch those and sort of see where it illustrates it. But as we go through into the 13th itself, again, that low pressure just clears away and we keep it very mild again, unsurprisingly. And this is where some exceptionally mild temperatures, absolutely ridiculous temperatures are recorded in this month. Because as we go through the 14th and into the 15th of December, we're dragging up a very long-fetched south to southwesterly wind. And if you follow those isobars back, they're going all the way down to the Canary Islands. So that's a really long-fetched south southerly wind, so it's unsurprising why it's mild. And actually, as we go into the 16th, this is where the mildest of the air starts to reach us, and we record a maximum of 17.2 degrees at Tynemouth in Devon. So again, another exceptionally mild day for the time of year. And through the 17th, we bring a bit of a rain band to the north, and in the 18th, again, we get another push of very mild weather. And overnight, 18th and into the 19th of December, we record a minimum temperature of, get this, a minimum temperature of just 17.1 degrees in Gravesend. And again, that'd be something you'd expect a summer month to do. But to get it in December when the nights are like, 16, 17 hours long is pretty unbelievable, really. And again, if you follow those isobars back all the way down to the Azores and the Canary Islands, and this was my mildest day of December 2015. I recorded a high of 16 degrees on this day, and a minimum of just 13 degrees. So it was really, just a ridiculous day. You can only say ridiculous with this month. And again, it stays very wet we turn it wet again into the 20th and the 21st. Again, very mild still. Into the run up to Christmas, so again we get another big push of mild air in the 22nd and the 23rd. This was actually a very sunny day though, the 23rd. Before on the 24th again, so into Christmas Eve, we bring another named storm system through the country. This was the 5th named storm, Storm Ava, and again this produced some more rain across Scotland and northern England throughout Christmas Eve and into Christmas Day. So Christmas Day was another wet one. It's actually quite a while since we've had a wet Christmas Day. Actually, it's normally quite a dry day, but nonetheless it rained on this one. And as we go into Boxing Day, we get another area of low pressure that comes up from the southwest, and this produces the 3rd very wet day in this month. And this actually produced some flooding around near where I am. There was some tremendous flooding across, like Lancashire and parts of Greater Manchester. Manchester city centre, the River Irwell that runs through it, the city centre of Manchester actually had some flooding on this. The River Irwell burst its banks. And again, I have some more pictures, and this is a picture from Salford, which is just next door to Manchester. You can see the Beatenham Tower there. The River Irwell just well and truly above its flooding levels. Just absolutely unprecedented rainfall again fell on this day. And again, this is from Todmorden in Lancashire. West Yorkshire, and again, it's just well and truly flooded by the rainfall. So again, just more flooding throughout the Christmas period, that people are getting affected by. There's no change still as we go into the 27th. Again, we keep very mild southwesterlies across the country before that shifts into a southerly on the 28th. Again, another long fetch southerly. And into the 29th, look at that chart. We have southwesterlies through the country and high pressure over Scandinavia is directing very warm air up to Svalbard and into the Arctic. And those are the upper air temperatures there on the 29th. You know, we're getting a big surge of warm air advection up towards the pole, and this did a great amount of damage. If I actually show you the northern hemisphere view there, you can see just ridiculously mild air going right up into the North Pole, and this actually melted some ice, I believe. And this is in the middle of winter. But the flip side of that was we did actually plunge some cold air into Eastern Europe, so for Eastern Europe, winter actually finally arrived right at the end of December. But for us, still, it was just very mild, and for the rest of Western Europe as well. And on the overnight 29th and into the 30th of December, sorry, I know it's a bit jumpy this, we get the sixth named storm of the season, which was Storm Frank. And you can see that mainly affected up near Iceland there on the 30th. But nonetheless, we have very tight isobars over the country, and again this just brought more heavy rainfall to places that really didn't need it, and again another surge of very mild temperatures. And that takes us into New Year's Eve then, so that's where we finish off the phenomenal December of 2015. You know, this will over time become a historic month. I'm very confident of that. And then we go into the start of January, and again, January 2016 was another mild winter month, though much, much, much colder than December, with a central England temperature of 5.4 degrees. So again, it was still a mild month, but you know, that CET seems like absolutely nothing compared to what December was. And throughout the first part of January, actually, we do keep it fairly mild. And again, unfortunately, with the rainfall, it was also the fourth wettest January on record. So again, there was just no respite from the rain. So there we are on the 1st of January, so New Year's Day 2016. And actually, we had a little bit of an incursion of cooler air on this day, so many places actually saw their first frost of the winter. You know, many parts of England, Wales actually saw the first frost. This was my first frost. Before by the second again it just turned mild, you know, so it was only a short-lived spell, and another deep area of low pressure comes into the UK. And again, throughout the second and into the third, this produced yet more copious rainfall. In fact, on the 3rd of January 2016, we had 103.8 millimetres of rain in parts of Aberdeenshire, so now parts of Scotland getting on the flooding. And through the 4th, you know, we just have areas of low pressure coming in through the Atlantic. But just notice, this is where the month gets a little bit more interesting, because as you can see, those lows and the jet stream, which is indicated by that black line there, are just diving a little bit further south, and we're getting slight signs of higher pressure. So, you know, there's just little hints that, you know, we could get some cooler weather as we go through the month. But nonetheless, for now, it's just still very mild and wet. You know, not quite as mild as December. We're more sort of the typical winter mild, but generally, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9 degrees, and lots of heavy rainfall coming through, as I said. And that carries on from the 4th into the 5th and the 6th of January. There's just absolutely no change. Through the 7th and into the 8th, we just have more areas of low pressure bringing heavy rainfall coming in off the North Atlantic. Into the 9th and the 10th, again, just no change. Before by the 11th, again, you can see we're getting another little ridge of high pressure building in the Atlantic. And as we go through the 12th and into the 13th of January, this starts to give us a bit of a cooler spell of weather now. So through the 14th and into the 15th of January, we do finally get a bit of a northerly incursion. So this does bring some fairly hard frosts. And and especially on the 16th where high pressure comes into play. So finally we get like a sunny, dry and frosty winter's day. A complete contrast obviously to what we'd seen throughout the rest of the late autumn and early winter period. And actually as we go through overnight 16th and into the 17th of January, we actually get a bit of snow that comes into that high pressure. And this actually brought some snowfall to central parts of England. So throughout parts of northwest England and the Midlands, we did get some snow finally in the middle of January. So, at least the winter did produce something, you could say. Nonetheless, though, it was a very brief spell, because by the 18th and the 19th of January, once again, the Atlantic charges back with vengeance. And again, as we go into the end of January, so through the 20th and the 21st, we have the Bartlett High coming back in Europe. And we actually get, again, another taste of December's mildness at the end of January. So through the 22nd and into the 23rd of January, again we just bring up more exceptionally mild southwesterly winds, and on the 24th of January we have temperatures going up to 16.5 degrees at Achnagat in the Highlands. So again, some exceptionally mild winds. Again, the isobars going down to the Canary Islands once again, so the tropical part of the Atlantic. Excuse me. And it stays very mild throughout this latter part of January really. So the 25th, again this was another exceptionally mild day. And into the 26th, there's just no change. Through the 27th and the 28th, we bring some very wet weather through overnight 27th and into the 28th. And then on the 29th, you can see again we've got another very deep area of low pressure developing to the northwest of Scotland, and this was Storm Gertrude, the 7th named storm I believe we're up to now. So again, more heavy rainfall, and actually throughout the north of Scotland, 29th and into the 30th of January, this brought some particularly severe winds. In fact, parts of Shetland and the Highlands actually had wind gusts going over 100 miles an hour. So a very severe end to January 2016. But that clears away as we go into the end of January. And that takes us into the start of February. And February 2016 was slightly cooler actually, with a central England temperature of 4.9 degrees. So really what's interesting is this winter, it was really just December and parts of January that were ridiculously mild. The rest of the winter was more just a bit more of a bog standard mild winter affair, but even still with even with this cooler February, the winter was still the second mildest on the CET series. It just again speaks volumes to how mild that early winter period was. But again, it just shows that sort of January and February just did enough really to stop us getting the mildest winter on the CET. But nonetheless, through the 1st and into the 2nd of February, we again get another named storm, and this was Storm Henry, I believe this was, which again brings more exceptionally strong winds to the north and more heavy rainfall once again. Throughout the 3rd and the 4th of February, again, the Azores High builds into Europe, so again we get another Bartlett spell, so southwesterlies come back through the 5th and into the 6th of February. Before by the 7th and the 8th of February we then get Storm Imogen, the next named storm, and this brought some severe winds much further south this time, so the severest of the weather was across like southern and central England. So again, the winter just refuses to let up through the 9th and into the 10th and the 11th of February. Before by the 12th it does finally start to settle down a bit, not completely but thankfully a little bit. So as we go through the 13th, 14th and 15th of February, we get a bit of a transient ridge coming up from the southwest. And so this brings some sunnier weather and again some cooler weather as well. And through the 16th and the 17th again and into the 18th. And as we go into the 19th, there was actually signs that we were going to get a bit of a cold spell, and in fact we did. because through the 19th, 20th and 21st of February, you see we're bringing the winds now a bit more from the northwest. So this is bringing us some cooler weather now, which is again a reason why the February CET is a little bit lower. So through the 22nd, 23rd of February we actually get a bit of a northerly, through the 24th and the 25th. So again, finally we do get some cooler weather for coal lovers right at the end of the winter. And that's really where we finish off February. So through the 26th, 27th, 28th and into Leap Day, of course, the February 2016 was a leap month. We just finished with that. And it stays chilly actually as we go into the start of March. Obviously as we go into spring, this is where winter proper actually arrived. And as we go through the 2nd and into the 3rd of March, you can see we actually get a bit of a northerly. And on the 4th, we bring low pressure into that. And throughout northern England, this actually brought a very significant snowfall. So even still, this very mild winter did produce a decent snowfall, even though regardless it was early spring. And this for my area, again you can see the time lapse for this event, actually brought the heaviest snowfall since probably March 2006 here. So a very significant snow event for the north of England. In fact, we had 10 centimetres of snow here, which isn't a bad depth, and further north we actually had 15 to 20 centimetres of snow. So a very decent early March snowfall. And it stays chilly into the 5th as well. We keep low pressure around the country, so at the 5th and the 6th there was further snow showers around. And into the 7th and the 8th that breaks down. And that's where that's as far as we're gonna go with the winter itself. The rest of March did see high pressure building through the country. So finally we did get some drier weather in March. Now, of course, the real question that's on everyone's mind with this winter is what caused that phenomenally mild December. And of course, the main culprit's believed to be the El Nino. And this is the sea surface temperature anomaly chart for New Year's Eve 2015, so the 31st of December. And you can see we have an extremely strong El Nino in the equatorial Pacific, and this was a real driver across most of the global weather. And an interesting thing to point out with this is this gives us a very mild December this year, but the last time we had an El Nino with comparable strength was actually 97-98. And anyone familiar with that winter, that was also a very mild winter. But curiously, the mild weather with that one came at the end of the winter, in fact. So February 98 was an extremely mild month, as opposed to it being December in this year. So, a bit of a link there perhaps, Perhaps if we get extremely strong El Ninos, does it mean we'll get an exceptionally mild winter month? You don't know, obviously we can't prove it because there is a bit of a dispute with El Nino on the British weather. But as with all British weather events, as we get through to April, this is actually where we got a spell of wintry weather. So, we fail in the winter, but, some cold weather actually came right at the end of April. So, there's the chart for the 21st of